Thank you for joining us the last talk of the day. I have the pleasure of speaking with a superstar in promoting cotton. Nathan Reed has stepped up to the plate, not only in movies and talking with brands and retailers, and he is a powerhouse in convincing your customers that your cotton is safe and wonderful to use. So I'd like to provide the introduction for Nathan, and we'll do that theme. Input costs going up, can growers influence this? This is what we'd like to talk about. And the most important, one of the big tools, not the most important, one of the big tools we have in our battle with polyester, cheap polyester, is cotton. And particularly what the cost per pound of our fiber is. You know, it's extremely difficult to compete with cheap polyester when the margins on textiles at every single stage are razor thins. Now, we've known this, so what's new with these various things we're going to talk about? Why are we talking about that right now? And the reason is because the third piece of the triad is coming together in beating the living beziggers out of polyester. The number one triad is what Nathan is doing and other growers are doing, like George, in promoting the story of cotton, connecting it with producers. The number two story that's unveiling is that this graph is about ready to change. This is the godforsaken market share of polyester and synthetics over the last about 35 years. And this comes from PCI Woods Mackenzie, from a hardcore polyester consultant who happens to be a friend of Dalen Hancock. Thank you, Dalen, for schmoozing her. But so this bottom blue area is the amount of cotton in million metric tons. Don't worry about the units, just the size. Here's polyester staple. Polyester staple has grown in market share, but it's still less than cotton. What's killing us is this filament, this man-made extruded filament, which is largely polyester. And you're going to wonder why I have this on the slide with that kind of story. Cotton growers need to prepare to supply the world with garments. This is the reason. This started the vision of Patagonia in 2014 to contract with University of California, Santa Barbara to question whether this microfibers, microfilaments, microplastics could actually have an issue. They published this in 2016. It's a beautiful summary of the state of the art. And what they learned is the microplastic particles are shed from washing synthetic textiles and washing cotton. So they come from cotton, and you wash any garment and you get shedding of microplastic particles. They are ubiquitous right now on land and in the oceans. Sea salt has them. Sea salt, you go and buy it, it's had them. They're all over the world. They concentrate some really bad actors. They have super high surface areas, so they concentrate these in the fish, and then when they eat the fish, they move it on up and into us. It's just like mercury with the some of the carnivorous fish. They are outrageously expensive to get out of washing machines, and filament garments have the most adverse impact. So they have done the damage to themselves because of this. This is the innovation. We all, not we all, but most of us my age, used to wear polyester garments in the 60s. And they were scratchy and they were rough and they felt like monofilament fishing line wrapping yourself in it. Well, this is what they learned how to do. They learned how to extrude polyester, like making, spaghetti, that you can make spaghetti about any shapes. And so these are the wonderful things that compete with cotton. They can blend in any weird chemicals, any weird colors, add functionality. This one, they can even make hollow stuff and put other molecules inside. But let me just focus on this one right here, because it illustrates the microfilaments called islands in the sea. So we're going to focus on that. Here's what it looks like as it is extruded from the spinnerets. And then they take this and it's knitted into yarn as this fairly yarn, staple size or yarn size. It's knitted into a garment, as a yarn. It comes straight out as a yarn. And then they use a chemical splitting. They take this thing and they dissolve it. And so one piece of yarn then turns into 21,000 microfilaments. So this thing just explodes, but by then it's already, you could not spin all those individual pieces because they just float away in the air. So fine, so small. So they wash in the laundry, they end up in the water, but also we're getting some help, so to speak, in creating a bigger awareness by all the plastic that's dumped in the ocean that finally breaks down, and these all go together. Fish eat them, bigger fish eat them, birds eat them, bottom fishers eat them, and then finally the impact on plants. So the really exciting story that's coming along, besides the awareness of this, is you notice that Cotton Incorporated hasn't been out waving that big flag for the last year saying, let's beat up on polyester, because we wanted to make sure we weren't vulnerable ourselves. So this is the really, really good results, a collaboration with Australia, with the Australian CSR, Cotton Research and Development Corporation. That is the Cotton Board, Cotton Incorporated equivalent for Australia, and we jointly funded this work. It's going to be probably ongoing for about 5 years. So this is just after 170 days, looking at the degradation of microfibers that come off of a whole bunch of garments. And so this was the starting point. This right now is done in wastewater inoculum. So we're simulating wastewater. This is how the work is done. And this top line in terms of percent degradation is the check, microcrystalline cellulose. Cellulose that's natural cellulose, ground up super fine. And you can see it degrades very rapidly. We're about day 170.
Would that be jute?
The what?
Would that be like jute?
Tubed? No, that's
jute, you know.
No, this is I think it's Avicel. So it should be a pure cellulose source. Jody, you know where Avicel? This is just about as pure cellulose as you can get. But it's a natural cellulose. I don't think it's jute, George.
But they don't make it into.
You buy it from Sigma, it's a chemical.
But you don't make it into material.
No. This is just extremely fine cellulose that's used by chemists. And it's what's considered the check here. Here is cotton. So this is what comes out of washing cotton garments. And you can see it degrades very rapidly. After 170 days, we're at about 65%. Here's rayon. You know, rayon is made by taking cellulose and dissolving it and then extruding it, and somehow in the process of dissolving it and extruding it and all the funky chemicals they add to it, it doesn't degrade quite as fast as cotton. In fact, we're looking for the next data points to see if it separates even more. Look at this one. This is 50-50 cotton poly, and at Cotton Incorporated, we were all watching this data as it came out, you know, and we're looking at this. 50-50 cotton's working just as good as cotton just about. Well, it did. All the cotton degraded, and now we got poly left, because here's poly at the bottom. This is how much polyester degrades. It just flat doesn't degrade. So the take-home message, all garments produce microfibers or microparticles. The cotton ones degrade right away, which is what we thought, because cellulose is the #1 macromolecule in the world, and we'd be up to here in cellulose if bacteria and fungi hadn't evolved to do this for us. So the opportunity that's being presented to us is this one right here. This is The Economist, August 2013. We know the two big forces that have tipped oil off that have been innovation and the environment. How much greenhouse gas can the environment tolerate? And how much innovation can oil's competitor come up with? Whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's electric cars, that innovation is causing this to tip. I constructed that. That's not a real Economist cover, but we're looking for that one in the future. Yesterday's fiber, why demand for polyester will fall. So if we just look at this opportunity that's being presented to us, peak poly is just a phrase we're throwing around, could open doors for cotton that would require more production. Cotton removes carbon from the atmosphere in fabrics and soil. Its fabrics biodegrade. Cotton is a food and a fiber crop. Cotton's innovation pipeline in the field and textiles is strong. Polyester pollutes, marine microplastics disposal, and PM 2.5 and greenhouse gases from factories. A nice story. What we don't want to happen in this hopefully takeover of cotton on synthetics is what happened in 2010, where the price spiked and then we suffered a huge demand destruction right after that. And so that's why this has to be a triad. It has to be increased demand for cotton, but we also have to supply demand at a reasonable price. I don't think we want to go back here where we're double the price of cotton, because then we'll be in these boom-bust cycles again. We'd love to have a more modest growth in cotton demand and in price. So ideally we want profit from fiber quality, cottonseed price, yield, reduced input cost. And I'll just have one slide on cottonseed price. George LaCour's most important topic for the year we're in right now is adding value to cottonseed by stripping gospel out. The regulatory agencies have looked at the application that they've received last July. They say everything looks good. We're in a 60-day comment period to get this trait fully deregulated in the US. But these people can pay a hell of a lot more for their dinner than cows. So we want to sell cotton seed to these people and not just to cows. And this technology takes gospel just out of the seed, but it leaves it in the rest of the plant where it helps with our insect control. But the key point on this, the more money you get from cotton seed, the better profitability you can be, even when cotton fiber prices are in the 70s. The last thing, and this is the introduction for Nathan, is we want to get part of that profitability from reduced input costs. That's been a theme that Nathan's been working on for a long time. I'll just share you what the generic chemicals can do and remind you of the success story that you already know about. Generic traits, we're learning, is a huge, huge cost to give you a generic trait. I don't see a clear path to market on them right now here in the US. Regulatory approvals in the US and around the world, patents on elite varieties. None of you want to go back to a variety 5415 Bogard Roundup Ready anymore. The companies have done such a good job of breeding higher and higher yields, and we're unlike a generic drug where you don't need it. Once a generic drug goes off patent, chemists can start making it and be ramped up fast. With a cotton, it's slow. So just to remind us what the generics have done for us in picks, this is the history of the price in Mississippi. For picks, competition came in. BSF had probably a deal with Mepex that maybe was not too kosher. They finally brought the company, but certainly when the competition came in, the price declined. So we had good competition here, and we had innovation. Competition gives you, lack of monopoly gives you competition and innovation. The same thing on Ethafon or PrEP. We started to get price decline, competition, and innovation. And the same thing with glyphosate. We're very familiar with this story. Competition came in, price reduction, massive competition on that. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Nathan. And